It has been almost 3 years since the announcement that we would be getting a 4th game in the Metroid Prime series. And 1 year since we were told that game was being sent back to Retro Studios, and sadly almost completely restarting development. Ever since then, information on the game has been little to none, with the only hints at how the game may be coming along being from news of artists being brought in to work on the game. Even with all the hype Metroid Prime 4 caused with its short yet sweet announcement trailer, it feels we may have started to slowly fall into yet another Metroid drought, something all too common for fans of this classic yet still fairly niche Nintendo series. But in the announcement trailer for Paper Mario the Origami King, right at the very end we see Mario wearing the helmet of Samus's classic Varia suit. The Paper Mario series is no stranger to little Easter eggs to other Nintendo franchises, so for many this may just seem like a fun little Easter egg. But to Metroid fans, it's a little ray of hope that we could be seeing something new very soon. Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well. Today I want to talk about Metroid, one of my all-time favourite video game series, but one I've not talked all that much about on my channel before. With the little tease at the end of the Paper Mario trailer, it has gotten me very excited about Metroid news, and I want to talk about what we could be seeing this year. Yes, this year. So let's talk a little bit more about that teaser in the Paper Mario trailer. As I said before, for many it may seem like just a fun little Easter egg, but for fans of the series it really got us excited. We have gotten no official news from Nintendo on the development of this game or any other Metroid game since they told us that they were restarting development on Prime 4. And at this point, I think Nintendo should know how badly Metroid fans have been wanting just a little bit of news on this game. So to me, this tease seems like a way to start getting fans excited without outright saying anything on any new Metroids. It plants the idea in our heads and starts discussions, like this one, raising awareness for the series more and getting those maybe not in the loop as much back into the hype. Now you could say that Nintendo didn't mean anything by this and it was simply just a little Easter egg. And maybe it was. But if it was, it's honestly a pretty stupid move from Nintendo. Like I said before, they know how much people have been looking forward to this game. And as a company, they should know that putting something like that in a trailer was going to cause excitement from fans. Now maybe if this scene was in the middle of the trailer, and maybe was accompanied by other nods to Nintendo games like Zelda, then we wouldn't think too much about it. But as this was at the very end, it seems very deliberate. They wanted you to see it, and they wanted it to have its own little spotlight. Doing this and then not following up with anything would be a pretty big bad move, as Metroid fans have already been waiting for the tiniest bit of information for years now. So I really do think that this little tease is to get us ready for upcoming Metroid news. The trailer for the Paper Mario game seemed to drop out of nowhere. I don't think I heard any rumours or news of it coming out before seeing Nintendo post the trailer on Twitter. So maybe this could be how we get our Metroid news. With Nintendo outright saying they have no real plans for Nintendo Directs for the foreseeable future, and with the lack of big gaming events this year, where big announcements would normally come from, I can see Nintendo announcing games in this much more simple way. Paper Mario, while not being part of the mainline Mario series, is still an extremely popular series for Nintendo, despite its hiccups with the last couple of games. So posting the trailer for the game online with no real lead up was definitely a deliberate move, and one I feel that they will continue to do for now. Along with that, the game comes out in just a couple of months. So maybe any more games they announce this way will also come out a couple of months after they are announced. So, we'll be getting a Metroid Prime trailer soon, right? No. As much as I want it, and I know many others do too, I don't think Metroid Prime 4 would be coming out this year. It would be a big surprise if it did, but I really don't see it happening. But I do hope we will at least get some news on it in the near future. With the lack of news on Prime 4, and what we have gotten only to be about artists being brought in to work on the game, I honestly feel we won't see Prime 4 for a couple more years. But even if it was ready, I don't think dropping it out of nowhere would be the best move for Nintendo. I feel Nintendo would want to drop a different Metroid game before giving us the big Prime 4, and that is what I think we'll be getting this year. Along with Metroid Prime 4, there have been a couple of other games in the series that people have been theorizing would be on their way to the Nintendo Switch, and one of them is the Metroid Prime Trilogy, a collection of the first 3 games in the Metroid Prime series. This is one of those games which feels so perfect for the Switch, and even more perfect once we knew a 4th game was on its way. Yet, it's 2020 and we still haven't seen it. It's kind of like Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD. They feel so obvious to bring over to the Switch, but for whatever reason just haven't yet. I've been saying that the Prime Trilogy should be coming to Switch for years now. Fans of Metroid get something to hold them over with until Prime 4 comes out. People who are interested in Prime 4 but have not played a Metroid game before have the perfect way to get into the series and caught up on the story. If someone wanted to try out the series before Prime 4 came out, they would have to get the 3 original games, 2 on the GameCube and 1 on the Wii. Or get the Trilogy for the Wii, which is honestly pretty hard to find at this point and can be very expensive. The Trilogy is also on the Wii U, but most people with a Switch don't have a Wii U and mostly won't want to pay out for one just for one game at this point. Like I said before, the Prime Trilogy seems so perfect for the Switch that it's strange that it hasn't been brought over already. A HD remaster of those games, like what we got with Twilight Princess and Wind Waker, would be fantastic. It would make the games even more beautiful and accessible than ever before. With this, we could even get a little hint as to what Metroid Prime 4 would look like on Switch, as at this point we have no ideas and the only thing we have seen from the game is a logo, which still itself could change. So the Metroid Prime Trilogy seems like a perfect fit, but it's not the only game which could come out this year. There are a couple more. First off, there is Metroid Samus Returns, which originally came out on the Nintendo 3DS. While we don't see many 3DS games being ported to the Switch, I feel it's something that we may start to see more of soon. Games like A Link Between Worlds, Ocarina and Majora 3D, Final Fantasy Theatrhythm, and Animal Crossing Happy Home Designer are some games that I feel would be good to bring over from the 3DS. Samus Returns is a remake of the second Metroid game, The Return of Samus, which originally came out on the original Game Boy. The remake was announced at E3 the same year as Prime 4 was, and it came out a little later that year. The game is a fantastic remake of Metroid 2. It plays extremely well, has a lovely soundtrack, and looks absolutely beautiful. Seeing the game made to work on the Switch with up-res graphics would be fantastic, as although the game is beautiful, the 3DS I still feel does not do it justice. Although it would be a port, I do feel that a lot of Metroid fans would still be very happy to see it come to the Switch. It had a lot of replayability and added in a lot of new things like new bosses, lore, and backstory. Along with that, there was one thing that always bugged a lot of fans, and that is that the hardest difficulty mode was hidden behind an amiibo, which is not really the best thing I felt Nintendo has ever done. Bringing it to the Switch, they could change this and make this hardest difficulty mode something that you can unlock instead of having to use an amiibo. Maybe if you have the amiibo you can use it to unlock it a little earlier, but if they brought it to the Switch, they could then change it so everyone can experience this difficulty mode no matter what. This hidden difficulty mode is called Fusion mode, and in this mode it makes everything hit twice as hard. It also sees Samus decked out in her fusion suit, which I feel is the perfect way to segue into the next game I feel could be on its way, a remake of Metroid Fusion. my personal favourite Metroid game. So since Samus Returns came out, I have been hoping for a remake of this game, and there are a couple things in Samus Returns which could be little hints as towards this may be happening at some point. First off, the developers of Samus Returns originally pitched the idea of a Metroid Fusion remake, but Nintendo said Metroid 2 would be the better choice. So the developers have already wanted to make a Fusion remake, so it could just be a matter of time before we see it. Next up is Fusion mode. If it was just an extra hard mode with nothing really looking different, it would just be seen as a fun little nod to Fusion. But as Samus wears her Fusion suit in this mode, and it will change colour depending on what power-ups you pick up, it always made me feel that it was hinting towards a remake at some point. Along with that, there is the very end of the game, where we see the repercussions of destroying all the Metroids. This was to show us what we have done by messing with the planet's ecosystem, by destroying all the Metroids. But the X-Parasite that we see in this ending are only seen in one game in the series outside of this cutscene, and that is Metroid Fusion. I know I'm not alone when I say that this cutscene got me extremely excited for a remake of Fusion. The style used in Samus Returns was fantastic, and I would love to see Fusion remade in that style for Switch. Out of all the games in the Metroid series, Fusion has a drastically darker theme to it, even for a series which is seen as one of Nintendo's more darker and creepy ones. If Samus Returns is anything to go by, the backgrounds and environment to the biologic research station in Fusion would look fantastic. Also, let's not forget about this game's really strange and creepy monster designs. I know everyone wants to see Nightmare's melting face in HD. Both Samus Returns and Metroid Fusion Remake seem like pretty perfect games to just drop out of nowhere for the Switch. Heck, Samus Returns was pretty much dropped out of nowhere when it was announced at E3. It was just shown at the treehouse and completely caught me off guard when I saw it. These games are much shorter than the Prime games, but still a lot of fun to play and are packed with replayability. If Nintendo does go ahead and start announcing more games out of the blue, I feel these two would fit that style pretty well. So finally, I want to talk a little bit about two more games, though out of everything, I feel these are least likely. But that's just because I feel that these games would be something no one expects to see right now. And those games are a remake of Super Metroid and an all-new Metroid V. For those of you who may not know the Metroid series all that well, you may be a little confused when I talk about Metroid V, so let me quickly explain. The Metroid Prime games, while part of the main Metroid timeline, are somewhat contained in their own bubble. You can play those games and really not need to know anything about games before them. So Metroid Prime 4 will follow on from Metroid Prime 3. Metroid 5 would be the newest in the timeline, following on from Metroid Fusion, which is the fourth Metroid. Maybe not the best explanation, but hopefully you can somewhat understand. At least it's not like explaining the Zelda timeline. The reason I want to say a little more on these is because I have somewhat mixed feelings. It's not that I don't want them to happen, I'd be extremely happy if they did. It just feels that they are a little less likely than Samus Returns and Fusion coming to the Switch. Still, there have been rumours about a Super Metroid remake now and then, but at the same time there always seems to be Metroid rumours, so it's not too much to go off. When it comes to Super Metroid, it's one of those games which is so classic and so beloved that we know it will do extremely well if it got remade. But it is also the question of if it should be remade. It's a game what I feel would be very hard to get perfect in a remake, and would take a lot of time and dedication to make it the best it could be. If they messed up a remake of Super, it could really anger a lot of fans. Remaking any game is always a big risk, but I feel that the way that Super Metroid is, it would be a big undertaking to make it something new and inviting for new fans, but also keep the open-ended world with all of its tricks intact for die-hard fans. Still, following the timeline of Metroid games which have been remade, Super Metroid would be next in line. The original Metroid was remade as Zero Mission on the GBA, and of course Metroid 2 was remade on the 3DS as Samus Returns. And on a side note, I didn't plan to talk about Zero Mission, but now that I mention it, I could maybe see them remaking it again in the style used in Samus Returns and bring it to the Switch, That would be something I would actually really like to see. But as I was saying, they have remade the first 2 Metroid games in the series, so it would now make sense to do the third, being Super Metroid. But it is one of those games with such a dedicated fanbase, I don't know if Nintendo would want to take on the responsibility of remaking it, as to this day, still so many people say that Super Metroid is a perfect game, and I can see where they're coming from. We will just have to wait and see what happens with that. No matter what, I would be interested to see how people would react to a Super Metroid remake. And so we get to Metroid V. Now, with this game, as it would be an all-new game to the series, it's not a matter of if, but a matter of when. Like I mentioned before, Metroid V would be following onward from Metroid Fusion, a game which came out in 2002. That was 18 years ago. That would mean Metroid 4 and Metroid 5 would have an 18-year gap between them coming out, which is pretty crazy. But Metroid is one of those Nintendo series, which, for lack of a better word, does seem to die for a couple of years before coming back. This has happened multiple times, the first being after Super Metroid, as there was not a single Metroid game released for 8 years until Metroid Prime and Metroid Fusion came out on the GameCube and GBA respectively in 2002. Not as crazy of a gap between 4 and 5, but still a pretty sizable one. I think we will get Metroid 5 someday, and when we do, it will be incredible. The main numbered games outside of the Prime series have always been in that 2D side-scrolling style, and I feel this would have to stay the same with Metroid 5. There's a lot I could say about how the story of 5 and stuff around it could go, but I feel something like that is better left for a different video. Some may not think that 2D side-scrolling Metroidvania games are all that popular nowadays, but if Hollow Knight is anything to go by, I think Metroid 5 would do really well no matter when it comes out. Speaking of Hollow Knight, if Nintendo wanted to get anyone outside of the company to make Metroid 5 or any Metroid remakes, the people behind Hollow Knight are top of my list. That game is fantastic, and I'd honestly really love to see what they could do with the Metroid IP. So out of all the games mentioned today, I feel a remake of Super Metroid and a new Metroid 5 are the least likely to happen, but you guys know if they did happen, I would not be complaining. It has been so long since we got Metroid news, and excitement is starting to rise on social media because of that short little clip at the end of a Paper Mario trailer of all things. If the tease in that trailer turns out to be nothing, myself and so many others will be heartbroken. But I have hope that Nintendo are planning something for all of us Metroid fans, and we just have to wait a little longer. Whether it's a remake, a port, a new game, or Metroid Prime 4, I'm pretty sure all of us fans will be happy no matter what it is. Unless it's something like Federation Force. Please don't do that again, Nintendo. Hey guys, thank you all for making it to the end of this video. It's been a while since I made a big scripted and edited video for my channel, but with all the buzz around Metroid coming back again, I really wanted to talk about some ideas I've had. And after seeing the tease at the end of the Paper Mario trailer, I really feel that we will see Metroid again this year. If you're new to my channel and enjoyed this video, why not subscribe? I do a lot of different stuff all around video games I love. If you enjoyed, also please don't forget to like, they always help me out and are very much appreciated. If you have any of your own ideas, do leave them in the comments below. Maybe you have some ideas for Metroid Prime 4, or maybe you want to tell me some things you might want to see in Metroid 5. Anything at all, do leave them in the comments below. I always love to read what you guys think. Thank you all once again for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye!